Hi, I'm Kamali, taking you through some of the things people are talking about and some of the stuff they're sharing around the world on Newsfeed today. Violence in film and its impact on society is back in the spotlight with the imminent release of Joker. UNICEF warns that 10 million children are at risk as fires rage in Indonesia. Nollywood eyes animation. And an off-the-pitch look at the Rugby World Cup in Japan. And at the top of our newsfeed, violence on film. The new Joker movie, which tells the origin of Batman's nemesis, has not even been released yet, and it's already causing controversy. And it's mostly around the violence in the movie. Now, complaints about violence on screen are common, but this one is happening at arguably a new moment for the culture. The Joker is about a white man who's rejected by society, gets angry, and then goes on to kill people. Now, that's obviously a simplified précis, but people are asking if that's the kind of story we need to be telling right now. The families of people killed in mass shootings say they're concerned. Here's James.
Is it just me? Or is it getting crazier out there?
Variety calls it deeply troubling. Vice says it's a terrifying realistic window into white terrorism. And Time magazine slams it as irresponsible idiocy. But the most damning criticism of the new Joker film comes from the families of the victims of the 2012 shooting in Aurora, Colorado. 12 people were killed when James Holmes opened fire in a cinema during a screening of the Batman film, The Dark Knight. In a letter to Studio Warner Brothers, the victims' families wrote, Joker presents the character as a protagonist with a sympathetic origin story. It gave us pause.
You don't listen, do you?
And that's the crux of the concerns with Joker. Arthur, played by Joaquin Phoenix, is lonely, downtrodden, and bullied. Through a combination of mental illness and rage, he becomes the Joker. His violence gives him power, and he inspires others to commit violent acts.
A corporation that is making money off of gratuitous violence needs to be taking care of society as well. We want to see survivors have the support that they need and funding that they need, just like a vet would. These people didn't sign up for war, but they've lived through a war.
Warner Brothers has responded, saying it has a long history of donating to victims of violence, including Aurora. The company says it's also joined business leaders in recent weeks to lobby policymakers to tighten gun control laws. It's added, Warner Brothers believes that one of the functions of storytelling is to provoke difficult conversations around complex issues. Something director Todd Phillips agrees with.
Well, I think it's saying something not necessarily about mental illness, but about treatment of people that have mental illness. So I think it's saying that, you can't really ignore a problem. It's something that needs to be addressed. And again, if those are the conversations that the movie inspires, I don't know why that's a bad thing and what everybody's getting so upset about.
Meanwhile, the U.S. military has warned service members to be on the lookout for potential shooters at screenings of the film. Joker is out in October.
One small thing.
Yeah.
When you bring me out, can you introduce me as Joker?
Now, this is, of course, an argument that people have been having for decades, since A Clockwork Orange in the 70s to Reservoir Dogs in the 90s. Does film violence make people violent? It's difficult to prove that one causes the other, though many who dislike violence in cinema have tried. Now, for some analysis and expertise, I spoke to Dr. Maria Flood, a lecturer in film from Keele University in the United Kingdom.
This kind of commentary is familiar from previous films. So I'm brought to mind of Fight Club, so that was a 1998 film, where it was also critiqued for its depiction of male violence. So it's really impossible to say whether violence in a film can lead to violence in real life. I think most people know the difference between reality and fiction. But do I think a film like this could potentially tip somebody who is already leaning in the direction of extremist violence over the edge? Yes, it probably could. So it's not about whether we should tell the story of perpetrators, but how do we tell these stories? So do we glamorize them? Which, reading a lot of the commentary about this film, it seems that this is the case, and Joaquin Phoenix is obviously a hugely important and very beloved actor. So yeah, it's about how we tell the stories as well. I don't think that one film is really the issue. It's about a wider culture that in many ways glamorizes gun violence, while simultaneously on a political level not doing enough to eradicate it, but also to create a society where people don't feel this call to violence or drawn to violence in this way. And a lot of that is about representations of masculinity as well. We have to question really our investment in these kind of images of spectacular violence and our investment in glamorizing figures like the Joker, who, as you say, is kind of an incel figure, a white supremacist figure possibly.
Okay, let's take a look at some of the other things that caught our eye on social media. Now, you will have seen these robotic dogs on your social media streams and possibly in your nightmares too. It's called Spot, and it's made by a company called Boston Dynamics, and they are now for sale. Actually, there are some of them out there right now with companies, which is terrifying, but not as terrifying as this. This is another Boston Dynamics creation, a humanoid type thing called Atlas. It is more nimble than you will ever be, and as our editor Louis says, may one day kill us all. And speaking of scary things, this is the latest trailer for the new video game, The Last of Us 2. It looks haunting and atmospheric, exactly what fans of the first game will be looking for. It comes out in February of next year. And now to Indonesia. Wildfires there have led to some apocalyptic-looking video being shared on social media. And now the UN's children's agency, UNICEF, says 10 million young people's lives are at risk, mostly from respiratory-related illnesses. Now, we spoke to Richard Wecker, who works for UNICEF in Jakarta.
Major concerns relate to exposure to small airborne particulate matter. It's the result of peatland fires that are raging through the region. Based on the number of provinces that have been declared as affected by the national government, we estimate from census data that up to 10 million children are affected. Ministry of Health and Education and other line ministries are working both on the suppression of the fires and also into trying to provide something of some relief. I think we all have to understand that the situation is beyond control to a large extent. Well, limiting people and children's exposure to pollutants is one, and therefore reducing the damage to their health and knowing where the safe havens are, but cannot be guaranteed as a protection measure.
Now, Nollywood, Nigeria's Hollywood, is the second biggest film industry in the world. Some of the studios in the West African country are looking to branch out from live-action movies into animation. Here's Adama.
Let me make this easy for the both of us. I challenge you to single combat. You win, you are king.
Nigerian filmmakers hope to make animation the next big thing for Nollywood, the country's movie industry. Malaika Warrior Queen made its debut at the 8th edition of Lagos Comic Con. Set in 15th century West Africa, it tells the story of a fictional queen and her struggle to maintain control over her empire. Malaika's character is heavily inspired by Hausa Queen Amina of Zauzul, who ruled in present-day northwest Nigeria in the 1500s.
It's a really, really great and very humbling time for me because this is why you do what you do. For people to be excited about Nigerian animation, Nigerian comics, Nigerian superheroes, and that's what we live for.
Fortune magazine says Nigeria's film industry is the world's second largest filmscape after India's. Forbes says the industry employs more than 1 million people, and Nollywood was valued at more than $50 billion at the end of 2018.
My name is Tomilola Wright. I'm a 29-year-old advertising executive.
Films used to be low budget, marred by poor sound and image quality, and copied illegally. But much of that has changed. Now, streaming services like Netflix want a piece of the action. In 2018, Lionheart was the first Netflix original film from Nigeria.
Nigerian artists, actors are working with people outside the country, and you see that a lot of actors outside the country want to come here and work with us and like experience our culture, like Africa, this, that, and put it in their movies.
Okupe hopes Malaika will convince investors to consider other ways to tell stories.
I feel like when we talk about the Nigerian animation and comic book industry, and even the video game industry as well too, this is the next frontier, and I feel like we're going to follow in the footsteps of the music industries, where in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see the same impact, not just on the continent, but overseas as well.
And last up, the Rugby World Cup is on in Japan right now, and TRT World's Lance Santos is there, the lucky boy. He sent us this sideways look at the tourney so far.
No matter where they're from, everyone is enjoying rugby's showpiece event. The big guys are feeling right at home, and the tournament seems to be hitting all the right notes. Team Samoa have shown their appreciation with the traditional Japanese bow. And fresh from their epic win over the Box, the New Zealanders have appeared on a Japanese TV show. Good luck trying to figure out what's going on though. Eddie Jones has admitted the only way to keep Big Billy Vunipola away from food is to make him play.
Well, there's a risk in going out and eating Kobe beef tonight. So we feel like it's much better he plays rugby than goes out to eat beef.
The All Blacks received a hero's welcome at Oita Airport, and skipper Kieran Reid impressed the locals by thanking them in Japanese. Organisers have been delighted with the tournament so far. Every single match has been sold out, and bar the dodgy refereeing, the opening round couldn't have gone much better. Local fans are turning up in their thousands to watch training sessions and flocking to meet the players.
They may be new to the game, but the commercial impact of this huge new audience cannot be understated. World Rugby say that this competition is going to be the third most watched sporting event of all time, and that's thanks to the huge numbers tuning in from Japan. And it is true that the locals here might not understand the complexities of rugby, but fear not, because they have a novel way of explaining things around here.
Local broadcasters have used animals to explain the various rugby positions. The elephants are the big boys up front, while the angry-looking warthog is a hooker. Giraffes are handy inner lineouts, and who wouldn't want a couple of tigers in the midfield? Japan 2019 has also showcased a breakthrough in tech innovation. George Bridges' try against South Africa looks even more impressive with these new camera angles. And don't trust your teammates if you play for Georgia. So far, Japan 2019 has been frighteningly good.
Lance, our own tiger in the midfield, or is it the warthog up front? That's all from the Newsfeed team. Reach out to me with your questions, comments, complaints and suggestions. You'll find me at Kamali Melbourne. You'll find us 24/7 on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our channel, and you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Follow, subscribe and add, and I will see you again tomorrow.